You're good.
All right, everybody, welcome back to episode, I believe, was this 49, Ryan?
I think it is.
49 of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. Let me get these stretches in real quick.
No.
Ryan, hey, that Lakers in 6 prediction, that one held up really bad. Anyways, I'm Trevor. This is Ryan. Welcome back to the Facts Over Feelings podcast. As I've said already, today we have a little NFL, but mainly NBA playoffs as round 2 has officially started this past weekend, and then we'll be in full swing this upcoming week. Ryan, tough first round for you. You got a lot of series wrong. I, however, am kind enough to let you start us off with some NFL discussion. I'm in a giving mood today.
I appreciate it.
I remember, did I not say Suns in 6 for weeks? I think it was. I could be wrong about that.
Oh, man.
Anyways, Ryan, get us going with some NFL breaking news.
I will, Trevor, but I just want to say we will get into this NBA discussion in 5 to 10 minutes here. So don't you worry, everyone. We will be talking about each and every one of these predictions and teams for this second round and each of those matchups. But talking about the NFL, Trevor, I'm glad we did this podcast when we did because there was breaking news this morning when we woke up, and that was that Julio Jones was going to be traded. And, this was kind of something that, was talked about a little bit, around the NFL, there were rumors Julio might get traded, that he might want to be traded, right? I think he actually said to Shannon Sharp on air that he wanted out of Atlanta, which was kind of funny. I don't know if he knew he was on live TV, but regardless, he said that, and he got his wish granted by getting traded to the Tennessee Titans. And Trevor, this is an interesting trade because he gets traded to a Titans team that lost a lot of their receiving core, right? Or at least lost, Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis in the offseason. So a sizable amount of their offensive production in the passing game. And they trade for a 32-year-old Julio Jones. And, I just wanted to ask your thoughts on this trade. And let me just give the full rundown on it before you go ahead and talk about it. The Falcons traded Julio and a 6th-round pick in 2023. And they got a 2023 fourth and a 2022 second. So, a decent trade. I don't know. Yeah, Trevor, I just want to hear your thoughts on it. Is this a good fit? Was it a good deal for both sides?
I think this trade is going to work out for both teams. Julio doesn't fit Atlanta's, I would say, timeline anymore. Atlanta, I guess they're hanging on with Matt Ryan, but you would assume in the next couple of years they're going to, I wouldn't say go into a rebuild, but they're going to look to get some younger players on that roster they already have. They're clearly all in on Calvin Ridley. Russell Gage had a strong year for them last year. They drafted Kyle Pitts. So they feel like they're good at weapons. And Tennessee is getting a Hall of Fame caliber wide receiver in Julio Jones. And the issue with Tennessee was, and up until last year, I guess, Tennessee never really had a second option at wideout. A.J. Brown was the guy, but Corey Davis didn't really come into his own, you could say, until last year. Sure. And he had a solid season last season, but he goes out in free agency. Tennessee loses Jonnu Smith, and they get a huge upgrade for their roster in Julio Jones. I don't think this makes Tennessee the AFC favorites per se, but I do think this is going to help out this offense extraordinarily.
Wow.
We saw what A.J. Brown could do. We know what he's about, and we've seen what Julio Jones can do, and we know what he's about. We already know they have Derrick Henry and a solid offensive line, and Ryan Tannehill has been very capable leading this offense. So I think Tennessee, for the short term, has won this trade, but it's going to work out for both teams. And as much as Julio Jones is a big lift for Tennessee, I don't think him alone is enough to get this team to where they want to be. And I would assume that's the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So one more question before I give my take on it. Like, do you think that they're in like the upper echelon of the AFC, with like the Kansas City,
I do.
The Buffaloes, the Clevelands? You do?
I do. I'd put them at 4th. I'd put them at 3rd or 4th. I'd put them behind Buffalo and KC, and I'd say they're pretty close to par with the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
Cleveland might have a better roster, but I think that wide receiver duo of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones is the best in the NFL, and they have the best running back in the NFL. So that Tennessee offense is going to be potent. I still have questions about their defense. Will they be able to generate pressure? Yeah. I know they lost Malcolm Butler to my Arizona Cardinals, so how will their secondary fare? They did, I believe, draft a corner either in the 1st or 2nd round of the draft this year. So we'll see. I think the defense still has question marks, but no doubt that offense is going to be potent this year.
Yeah, and this is an interesting trade, Trevor. So let me start off by saying I think this is a good trade for both sides, just the trade itself. Like, I think, Tennessee didn't give up too much, right? I mean, a second-round pick isn't that much. And they get a guy who, as you said, is a Hall of Famer, and he's going to help out immediately, obviously, and going to take a lot of that pressure off of A.J. Brown. I think that there's a few key points here, though. First, he needs to stay healthy, right? And that's a given. But, Julio has had his fair share in recent years, especially of leg injuries, right? He had a foot injury a few years back. I think he had a hamstring problem this past season or in past seasons. And we know hamstrings can nag, not over the course of off seasons, but if you were to hurt your hamstring in the season, it's very hard for a receiver to come back 100% from a hamstring injury when the season's in full swing. Very easy to re-injure. My point is him staying healthy is very, very important. Secondly, it's worth noting Julio does have, a big salary, right? It's $20 million a year. I mean, this is a sizable salary that, people are overlooking how important this is for Atlanta. I think that Atlanta clearing that off the books, especially as you said, Julio doesn't fit their timeline anymore, right? I mean, this team is definitely waiting to get, another younger quarterback, or at least hopefully Matt Ryan can be good enough in a year or two and maybe they can make a playoff run, but they need to improve that defense after getting Kyle Pitts, and retooling that offense. So he doesn't really fit their timeline. So it's good that they got that money off the books, but it is worth noting that that's a lot of money, right? Especially if he were to get injured or, at age 33 or 34 in the next few years, because he's 3 years left on his deal. If he were to fall off a little bit like AJ Green did in Cincinnati kind of style, that's worth noting that might come back to bite them. But I do think that this deal is good for Tennessee because I think they are definitely in the top 4 in the AFC. But being a Cleveland Browns fan, I'm a little biased. I think that those 3 teams in the AFC are kind of, above
And
the rest.
I wouldn't put them past Baltimore either. I think Baltimore is worth
I
putting in that discussion as well.
Yeah, they are, but I will say Baltimore did lose a lot of D-line and O-line this offseason. I think they lost at least 2 starting offensive linemen this offseason. I know they lost at least 1 or 2 linebackers and D linemen in the offseason. So, we'll see if they can generate pressure at the same rate they were in past years, see if that O-line can hold up the same way it did without some Pro Bowl caliber talent that left. But yeah, Tennessee, I mean, they're going to be a good team. My question is their defense. I never questioned their offense, Trevor, even if Julio wasn't there. I thought their offense is still going to be good. It's a great system. Tannehill's great in that system, and he's proven, as you said, that he can be good. I just don't know about that defense because you said they lost Malcolm Butler, right? They lost Clowney. However, not impactful he was last year. He's still a solid player, at least on sealing the edge on the run game. And they lost Adoree Jackson, another corner who played well for them prior to getting hurt. So they've lost a few pieces. I need to see if they can have some guys step up because if that defense can't, get stops consistently, they're just not going to win games against the best. So that is my biggest question for them, that defense. But, getting Julio to go with A.J. Brown is a solid deal, especially for the price.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the more I think about it, the more I actually do like this even more for Tennessee because Derrick Henry as is a load. And not only are you taking the pressure off of A.J. Brown, but I think you're taking the pressure off of Derrick Henry by bringing in a guy like Julio Jones. When healthy, of course. Julio Jones is a guy you can honestly throw the ball to on a broken play, on a design play. He can get open. He obviously is great size. I believe he's 6'5". He can leap. And that's going to take pressure off of not having to force feed Derrick Henry the ball 35 times a game. Obviously, they're going to still go through the run game with Derrick Henry. But taking that little bit of pressure off of him and, not forcing A.J. Brown to be double covered every play is going to be great for this Tennessee offense. I think it's going to be great for Ryan Tannehill. And you mentioned the teams at the top. Buffalo and Kansas City, I would argue, didn't get all that much better this offseason. I mean, they were in the AFC Championship game last year, Kansas City in the Super Bowl, so how much better do they need to get? But Tennessee's coming. They're not going to be an easy out. Obviously, Cleveland got a lot better on the defensive side of the ball, so they're going to be tough as well. But I look at Tennessee, and when you have 3 elite offensive weapons like that, you can beat anybody, especially in an NFL-like sport where everything is one and done. You get into the playoffs, in a one-off, they can beat anybody. Would I say that the AFC favorites? No, I agree with you. I do think those 3 teams are slightly better. I would throw Baltimore in there as well. I think Baltimore is right there, but Tennessee I'd say is a little bit above them. But this trade is going to pay dividends for Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown and Ryan Tannehill, of course. Yeah,
no, I think that, I said it before, I'll say it again. I think this deal is a solid deal for the Titans. I think that it's going to pay dividends as long as he stays healthy. Again, I'm just going to say it one more time. The defense is the main question for me. They'll be able to compete with anyone on the offensive end. They have these last few years. I just want to see that defense step up and make plays. Because Bud Dupree is they signed Bud Dupree in the offseason. Sure, he replaces Clowney, but they paid the guy $85 million. And I think he's, at least Trevor, I don't know if you can name anyone else on that D line off the top of your head. I don't know if I can. So I don't know how consistent they're going to be able to generate pressure, blah, blah, blah. But regardless, they'll be able to compete because they have such a potent offense. You are right. And, they're in a win now type situation, right? Derrick Henry isn't a guy that sticks around for the next 7 years. Running backs don't stick around for that long. Their window's not that large, at least, in regards to having an elite level running back. So, why not go for it now? Why not get a guy who's 32, who will probably age out of his prime, if he's not already, but age out of his elite level of play around the same time Derrick Henry ages out of his elite level of play. So the more I think about it, the more I kind of like the timeline of the deal for both sides, right? It was a solid deal. We'll see what happens with Tennessee. We'll see if they're able to, compete with the best this year. But Trevor, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on this, but we can move on to the NBA. I know you've been, really excited to talk about this on this podcast ever since this past weekend. But you can take it away. Go ahead. What second round series do you want to talk about first?
But first, woo! Series against the Lakers felt good. Remember in game 3, LeBron, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little between the legs. Drummond was getting in on it. Have a nice summer in Cancun, fellas. Tell me how the margaritas are, all right? Anyways, Ryan, back to the present. I can't be living in the past. I'm not a Cleveland Cavaliers fan.
Wow.
I have to worry about the next opponent. I have to worry about the Denver Nuggets. I'll get that series out of the way real quick. I'm going to go Suns in 6 in that one. For the Clippers,
get it out of the way real quick.
Well, we'll talk about that in more detail. I wanted to get my prediction
you want to
on
go
the record.
Okay, we can do that. Okay.
I wanted to get my prediction on the record real fast. I'm going to go Suns in 6 in that series.
Okay.
Clippers Jazz. I'm going to go Clippers in 7. Bucks Nets. Before the series started, I believe I said Nets in 6. I'm going to stick to the Nets in 6. I think Milwaukee might steal game 2, but they're going to need to figure out a lot on the defensive end. And for the 76ers Hawks, I didn't think Atlanta was going to be much of a challenge for Philadelphia, but after watching today, that's going to be a very interesting series. I'm going to go Philly in 6. I feel like the way Philly came out, they won't come out like that again in the first half, getting down by 28 within 2 quarters pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 76ers in 6. Ryan, I don't know if you want to run through your predictions real quick, and then we can talk about these more in depth.
Yeah, no, I will go through my predictions right now, because you did it, so I got to follow up with mine. Let's go through the same order you did. So Suns, Nuggets, look, I've been back and forth on this for a while. I'll explain it later. I'm going to go Nuggets in 7. All right, next series we have the Clippers and the Jazz, correct? Trevor, what did you say for Clippers and the Jazz?
I said Clippers in 7.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Jazz in 6. I'm going to go Utah in 6 games. And then the Bucks and the Nets, I'll go Nets in 5, actually. I think that we'll talk about it more. And then Sixers and Hawks, I think I'm going to go Sixers in 7. I think Atlanta's given them all they can handle here. And I would not be surprised at all if Atlanta won this series in 7 games, but I think that Philly will win the series in 7 games.
Okay, so we have we have the Western Conference we completely disagree on, and then the East we both think it's going to be Philly Nets. Perfect.
Yeah. So
just for the record, I was 7-1 in first round predictions. Ryan was 5-3.
I was 5-3.
Just wanted to throw that out there. But Ryan, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Trevor, we can start off with the Suns Nuggets. You want to know why? Because I correctly predicted the Denver Nuggets to win in 6 games.
Oh, my Lord.
I did say 7, but I did say the Denver Nuggets. And Trevor, for weeks now, has doubted the Denver Nuggets on this podcast. And I'm telling you, this team is a team to be afraid of. They really are. I would not be surprised. Look, I wouldn't even be stunned if the Denver Nuggets made it to the finals. I wouldn't even be stunned.
All right.
I don't think they will. I don't think they will, but I wouldn't be stunned if they did it. I think this team...
Ryan, this is planet Earth, right? Let's not lose reality here.
Let's talk about this though. So I said Denver.
Ahead,
I said Denver in 7. Trevor said Phoenix in 6. He can get into that in a minute. But look, Denver outplayed Portland. They outplayed a team that was more talented and had the better player, at least the more impactful player scoring wise, in my opinion, in Damian Lillard. Right? I mean, this guy can score in bunches. Not that Jokic can't, but Jokic doesn't rain in threes the way Lillard does. So, Lillard was a more potent, pure scoring threat, and I think that they took care of business.
They
were tied 2-2. They won 2 in a row. They won a double OT game, which was the game of the playoffs, in my opinion. That was a fantastic game. And you know what the key was, Trevor? You know what the key was? The guy who I said was the key all along, Michael Porter Jr., and he stepped up big time, and he stepped up, when it mattered. Game 6, Trevor, he comes out. I think he makes 6 threes in a row in the first half, and finishes with 26 points on 10 of
and
19
then missed
from the
6 in a
field.
row. You're right.
Look, he was 10 of 19 from the field, 50% from 3 on the night. He stepped up big time, 26 points. And then again, the bench stepped up again for Denver. Every game, someone on that bench steps up. One game was Paul Millsap, right? The next game, it was Monty Morris. And then in game 6, again, it was Monty Morris. He had 22 points. He was a plus 19 box plus minus in this game. They played absolutely fantastic. Their bench, Michael Green was a plus 22 box plus minus. These guys stepped up off the bench in an 8-man rotation. I just really like this team. And Trevor, I've said it to you, and I'll say it now. Phoenix and Denver may not have similar strengths in terms of Phoenix is a backcourt strength and Denver is front court strength, but they're similar in the sense of they're both very well disciplined teams. They don't turn the ball over a lot. They have great head coaches, guys who can rally the locker room, get them to rally behind them very well, and they're very smart intellectual coaches, and they're both great defensive teams. So they're similar in that way. I think that both teams play above their talent level. I think both teams do. And I think that's why the series is going to be so great. That's why I think it's going to be so close. And I almost said Phoenix in 7. But the reason I went Denver in 7, Trevor, is because Denver, at the end of the day, has the best player in the series. And I think that when it comes down to it, Nikola Jokic is going to clutch up. The best player is going to clutch up, and he's going to win it for them when it matters most. And I think that that's what's going to happen. But I think it's going to be a fantastic series. Might even be the best series of the playoffs. I'm really excited to see this series. And Phoenix isn't any slouches either. I got to give credit where credit's due. Great performance against the Lakers, even with Anthony Davis going down. Players get hurt. You can't, fault Phoenix for that. They did their job. They won the games they were supposed to. And let me just say one thing real quick. Anthony Davis should not have played in that game 6. Whatever doctor cleared him for that game should be fired. That could ruin a guy's career. I'm serious. I love The Heart by Anthony Davis, but that can really hurt his career. The guy had 2 injuries in his legs, and you clear him. He had to go out 2 minutes in because he couldn't even run. He couldn't even jog. So I didn't like that they even let him try to play. I just wanted to say that. But credit Phoenix. They stepped up, and Booker's an absolute god. So give credit where credit's due. Trevor?
Yeah. No, I agree with you on the Anthony Davis point for sure. Whatever team doctor thought he was healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that one. And then they said he was questionable to return throughout the game. I was like, in what world is he questionable to return? Anyways, to this series, the Suns have been proving people wrong all year. We're not a contender. We're a great regular season story. Chris Paul's not going to elevate us to anything more than a 6 seed. And I'm tired of hearing it. And even when the Lakers lost, Anthony Davis went down. That's great. When Anthony Davis went down, the Lakers couldn't touch us. That was a blowout of a series when Anthony Davis went down. So give my Suns a ton of credit. We are the better team. We are the better coach team. And that is what happened with Denver. Denver is a better team than Portland. Portland has better individual players, which I thought would morph itself more in the playoffs than in the regular season. But Denver plays as one.
They do.
Portland's team is Damian Lillard, take us to the promised land, and maybe we'll carry you there. Maybe we won't. Denver, and Ryan mentioned Michael Porter Jr. I'd like to highlight the fact that Denver, a different player stepped up for them every game. And that's what a team does. Next man up mentality. If one guy's off, the next guy's got to step up. Monte Morris was huge for them off this series in the latter half of the series. Aaron Gordon has been good for them. He hasn't necessarily scored the ball that much, but he's good size. He can rebound the ball. He's a good defender.
Efficient, too.
Paul Millsap, veteran experience. JaMychal Green was very impactful in Game 6. So I got to give Denver a lot of credit. This is not the most talented roster ever, but they play great together as a team, and they run through Jokic, and Nikola Jokic is an absolute stud. I got to admit it. I think he's the MVP this year. There's an argument for Steph Curry, but Steph Curry's also in Cancun right now, and Nikola Jokic isn't. So I think Nikola Jokic is the league MVP. He's played like it. He played like it in the series. Getting to my Phoenix Suns, though, and this is why I'm going Suns in 6.
Sure.
That was our first playoff series for a lot of our guys. I think we're going to play a lot looser And you saw it in games 5 and 6. We even looked a lot looser as the series went on. We're going to look a lot looser. We're going to look a lot more comfortable. Chris Paul is going to be a lot healthier. Hopefully, please don't re-aggravate that shoulder for the 19th time, Chris Paul. I'm begging you. And I think the Suns are going to look even more confident than they did in games 5 and 6. And home court is going to be a factor here because Phoenix has a real home court advantage this postseason.
Yeah.
16,000 fans in game 5. I believe it's going to be 16,000 again going forward. That is a legitimate crowd. Denver's going to have to deal with that. I know it was like 10 or 11,000 in Portland, but 16,000 is a lot higher than that. And I want to talk about Ryan saying Nikola Jokic is the best player in this series, and he is. But Devin Booker is a difference maker. This guy is special. I've been saying it on this podcast. He is a reincarnation of Kobe Bryant. People are starting to see that, and you will see that even more in this series. He's more confident than ever. I think Chris Paul has more confidence in him. He has more confidence in himself. And another big X factor is DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton played a very solid series against the Los Angeles Lakers. He was fantastic in the first 4 games. Didn't have as much of an impact on the stat sheet in games 5 and 6, and that was honestly because Devin Booker blew the game open in the first quarter, and he didn't really need to do much after that.
Yeah.
But DeAndre Ayton is going to pose at least. He's going to what I hope he does is at least annoy Nikola Jokic, and Jokic admitted it. Jokic in an interview the other day said DeAndre Ayton is one of the bigs that gives me the most trouble in the NBA, and I think that's a huge compliment. And I think that gives you an idea of what DeAndre Ayton can do. He's athletic. He can move with Jokic laterally, and he has the size to match up with him in the post. Obviously, Jokic is way more skilled, has way more overall coordination than DeAndre Ayton. But I think we have a guy that can match up with Jokic for 40 minutes. And we have a better backcourt. Chris Paul and Devin Booker is light years better than Campazzo and G League street clothes Austin Rivers. I would expect our backcourt to dominate, and I'd expect DeAndre Ayton to pose enough of a problem for Nikola Jokic to give my Suns this win in 6.
Yeah, I want to say a couple things, then we can move on to the next series. I just want to say, before you disrespect Austin Rivers like that, he stepped up in multiple games in the series, Trevor. Okay, the guy dropped like 18 to 20 in like at least 2 games in this series.
He was guarding Damian Lillard, and I understand that's a tough matchup, but Damian Lillard went bananas.
No, I'm talking about Rivers on the offensive end, though. But yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying he's gonna have to play defense too.
No, I mean, sure. I mean, I don't think Austin Rivers is like that bad of a defender, but I mean, I expect Phoenix's backcourt to outplay Denver's 100%. I also want to note that DeAndre Ayton, you're right. He played a great series against the Lakers. He played fantastic. I don't think he'll have as good a series against like an actually good big against Nikola Jokic. I think the Lakers bigs outside like AD obviously, but Andre Drummond really, Marcus Gasol really, Montrezl Harrell's like 6'8", really. You think those bigs are difficult to go against on the offense? But not really. They're not really. AD is. The other three are not. The other 3 are not. At least in my opinion. Andre Drummond's one of the most overrated big men in basketball. He flops instead of defends. He's terrible. Marcus Gasol can't run, and then Montrezl Harrell's just a little too small, though I think he's probably the best of the 3 on that end of the floor, in my personal opinion. Regardless, it'll be interesting to see how Ayton plays in the series. If he plays well in the offensive end, I'm gonna have a lot of respect for him, and he should get a big payday because Nikola Jokic is the best of the best. And I also want to note that Denver. You mentioned the Phoenix crowd, Trevor. Because Denver advanced to the second round of the playoffs, they have now been granted full capacity in their arena for the second round and on full capacity. 91% capacity. So pretty much full capacity. Over 18,000 fans in Denver for these upcoming games. So I just want to note that because Denver will also have a home crowd and they will also have a home court advantage. Both teams will have a massive home court advantage. And Trevor, before we move on, I just love to see it, right? Last year in the bubble, it was great. It was awesome that we were able to watch playoff basketball. But just being able to have the fans there, you forgot for a time, Trevor, how much of an impact they have on these games. Like they really do have an impact. When they get into the game, when they start getting loud, they definitely cause teams go on runs and cold stretches. And, I just love to see it. So I just wanted to mention those few things before we move on.
I completely agree with you about the fans. But knock off the crap with, throwing crap at players. I said it last week.
Oh,
let's behave like people here. Quarantine was hard on all of us, but come on, no more throwing stuff at players. Denver fans, we've had no incidents. Phoenix Suns, we've had no incidents. So keep it up. 2 of the best fan bases in basketball. Way to go. I'm happy for Denver. I'm glad they're going to get a nice full stadium to watch my Phoenix Suns win multiple games on the
Oh,
road.
okay.
So, with that being said, I would like to talk about the other series in the
Yeah.
Western Conference, the Clippers and the Jazz. And Ryan, I want you to take this one first because I do have a few things to say, but I want to hear what you have to say since we do disagree on this one.
Yeah, look, Trevor, look, I've watched both of these teams pretty extensively, particularly the Clippers. I watched their series very closely because it was like obviously a hotly contested series. It just ended today, game 7. And I think both of these teams are supremely talented. I think the Clippers have the most talent out of any team left in the West if you go off pure talent.
I would agree.
Although, ironically, Trevor, I think that I might actually pick every other team in the West over them. While they did beat
Wow, okay.
while they did beat Dallas, Trevor, while they did beat Dallas, I expected it to be easier. And look, people are gonna be annoyed because I've been kind of disrespecting the Clippers for a while, right? We both have, really. We've been saying that they don't have the mental fortitude and all of this and that, which they might not, but they did have enough fortitude to overcome a 3-2 deficit, against a team in the playoffs. So I got to give credit where credit's due. And Kawhi Leonard stepped up big time. I want to say that he stepped up big time, and a bunch of their role players did as well. Marcus Morris stepped up big time. Yep. I think he had 22 points today. Reggie Jackson stepped up big time in multiple games in this series, especially game 6. He stepped up big time. So a bunch of the role players, Terrence Mann stepped up big time. A bunch of the role players played very, very well down the stretch in this series. I just like Utah. I think this is their year. I watched them against Memphis, Trevor. I mean, as soon as Donovan Mitchell came back, this series was done. It was done. Game 1 was close, but Utah didn't have their superstar. And make no mistake about it, Trevor. Donovan Mitchell is a superstar, right? He is a superstar in this league. What is he, at 24 years of age, already a superstar? I think he's just elite. And it's great to watch him. This team is just a better version of the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion. A team with a great head coach, great chemistry on both ends of the floor.
That's why we swept them in the regular season.
Okay, and that's why you don't have the 1 seed. But anyway, Utah they have a great bench as well. 2 Six-Man of the Year finalist candidates in Jordan Clarkson and Bogdanovich. I want to mention that as well. So a great bench and a great defensive roster. And defensive player of the year probably in Rudy Gobert, or a finalist in Rudy Gobert. I really like this team all around. And I simply think that the Clippers, I'm just expecting them to collapse at any point, Trevor. I really just am. And to me, when you make 23s in game 7 to win, and when you have Kawhi go for 45 or 47 in game 6, like that's just, those are 2 things that aren't going to be consistent. And I don't think they can hit 23s in the game again. Or whatever they hit, something like that. They hit a lot of threes.
They did hit 20, you're right.
I think it was 20. Hit 20. And Kawhi going for almost 50 is not going to happen probably again, or at least not more than once in the series. So I struggle to find a way to see LA overcome Utah's just excellence on both ends of the floor. I just don't see how they can do it without having extremely hot shooting, which I've already talked about with Dallas, which was their downfall. Teams that shoot the 3 and shoot it a lot and rely on shooting at a high clip, when you don't make your threes, it's nearly impossible to win. That happened to Milwaukee in game 1 against Brooklyn, happened to Dallas tonight. Point is, I think Utah's a more consistent team. I think they're going to come out and win the series.
I'm actually so glad you brought up the live and die by the 3-pointer argument, because that's exactly why I think the Clippers are going to win this series.
Wow.
Utah lives and dies by the 3. I believe they took the most 3-point attempts in the NBA this season. They might have had the most makes as well. They did shoot the 3 ball really well this year. I'll give them that. But the Clippers have the wing defending and the depth to run Utah off that 3-point line. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Reggie Jackson, Nick Batum can even run guys off the 3-point line. Then you bring a guy like Terrence Mann off the bench, Rajon Rondo off the bench. They have legitimate defending, and that's going to be a problem for Utah. Utah's going to run a lot of ball screens, like Dallas did. And I think the Clippers made the necessary adjustment in games, I believe it was game 4, where they went to the small ball lineup. That way they could switch every pick and roll and not have that big of a mismatch on Luka. Obviously, Luka was still dominant, but the rest of the role players, didn't follow suit like they were earlier in the series. So for me, also, excuse me, as good as Utah can shoot the three ball, the Clippers can shoot it just as good, if not better. I believe the Clippers had the highest three-point shooting percentage as a team in the NBA at over 40%.
Mm,
And finally, the Clippers have the best player in this series in Kawhi Leonard. And
they
Kawhi
do.
Leonard in Game 6 and 7 looked like the Kawhi Leonard when they won the championship in 2018. He went for 45 in Game 6. That's not necessarily going to happen again. It very well could. Kawhi Leonard has the capability, but he seems locked in, and he's a guy that can average 30 a night, and I think that's going to be a huge lift for them. And you mentioned the role players. The role players stepped up big time. Marcus Morris was huge for them today. He had 23 and 7 made threes. Reggie Jackson was solid for them. Luke Kennard and Terrence Mann were great for them off the bench. So for me, the Clippers can match Utah's depth. They can match Utah's three-point shooting. Rudy Gobert is going to be a bit of an issue, but I think they're going to be able to neutralize that because Rudy Gobert is not a great he's a really good rim protector and interior defender, but if you put him on the switch in the pick and roll, he doesn't have the greatest lateral quickness and lateral movement. So I do think if you can put Gobert in uncomfortable positions on defense, you can neutralize him. The difference maker is, how is Kawhi Leonard going to play? Is he going to look like MVP Kawhi Leonard? I think he is. And that's why I have the Clippers, I believe I said in 7. Also, we did talk a lot about the Clippers being mentally weak. And that might still stand, but I think that series against Dallas is going to be huge for their mental psyche. Their ability to go 2 down at home, their ability to go 3-2, have to go on the road to win Game 6 just to force a Game 7. I think that was huge for the Los Angeles Clippers. And that shows growth, because this team would not have done – if this team last year would not have won this series, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have fought back from a 2-0 hole at home. They wouldn't have fought back going 3-2 down, having to play a road Game 6. So to me, this team grew up. Kawhi Leonard played like an MVP again, and the role players, grew up and stepped up big time. And the Clippers have a better roster than Utah, and I believe they're going to win this series.
Yeah, I'll make this quick because we've been going on for these series for a while, but I just want to say about your point about Utah's three-point shooting. You're right. They did take the most threes in the NBA this year, Trevor. But I do want to note, and this is just one game example in the playoffs, but I think it's important to note. Game 5 against Memphis. They won by 16. They shot the three ball at 38%.
That's pretty good.
But
that's really good as a team.
But my point is it's not Dallas good, right? Remember when Dallas was winning those games? They were shooting in the 40s and even 50% range as a team in those games. Okay. My point is Utah isn't as live and die, like shoot an ungodly percentage from the 3 as Dallas was.
That's not the comparison is
true.
Just not.
It's
true. That's not a fair comparison. Memphis and Dallas are much different basketball teams, right?
I'm comparing Utah and Dallas.
But the issue is Utah played against Memphis.
Yes.
And it's just comparing apples and oranges. All I'm hearing here is, well, Utah didn't shoot the ball as great against Memphis as Dallas did against the Clippers in a few games.
When they won. Yeah, my point being is that Utah can win games, right? And they don't have to shoot the 3 at these crazy clips. Like
against a weaker opponent, yes.
I mean, it's true. It's against a weaker opponent, but I bet Utah can go into this series against the Clippers and shoot the 3 in the 30% range and pull out a win. You want to know why? Because they're a much better defensive team than Dallas is.
No doubt.
They're a much better defensive team than Dallas is as well.
They're going to win my other point. 1. I am very confident in them winning Game 1. My point is they're not going to do that 4 out of 7 times. The Clippers have a better team. Okay. They have the best player, and they can match Utah's three-point shooting and defense.
We'll see. Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. I think Kawhi is a god-tier defender. I think Paul George is a good defender. But
don't get me wrong, I could very well see the Clippers go down 2-0. That is very foreseeable. They have no rest, and they're playing at altitude on the road in a hostile environment.
Trevor, is there a guy on the Clippers that can guard Rudy Gobert?
Yes. They don't. Here's the thing.
Or the paint. But
that's not.
I just worry.
What is Rudy Gobert?
It's not just Rudy Gobert. I'm sorry.
But here's again. Did you watch the recent games? Dallas started Boban Marjanovic and Kristaps Porzingis, 2 7'3" guys, and the Clippers handled that fine. Big men in
Yes.
the NBA who are unskilled, like Rudy Gobert, will not dominate a game. He might give you 15 points and 15 rebounds, but he's not going to beat you, right? The guard play and the shooting ability of, I should say, the guards and guys who can handle the ball, skill players are going to be able to beat you, not some big rim protector
True.
who's
But
very unskilled.
I do want to say Kristaps really disappointed me in the series. He was supposed to be some other like Knicks.
Yeah, he was
He
terrible.
was supposed to be like another star alongside Luka when they traded for him, and he has not been anywhere close to that from when I've seen him play. And so I was really disappointed in him, not only in the series, but just since he's been in Dallas. I really haven't seen that much from him. So I've been disappointed in him. But Trevor, we've talked about this series long enough. We can move on to the next series, which is the Bucks and the Nets, Trevor. And I wanted to turn this over to you and ask you, why do you have the Nets in 6 games?
The last night showed me a lot because I was very high on Milwaukee after that Miami series. I've even said it. I said Milwaukee can beat this team, and I still think they can. I think they can beat Brooklyn, especially without James Harden. But Milwaukee, as bad as their three-point shooting was, they're going to have to figure out a way to defend better. Obviously, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are very tough, just individual matchups. Yeah. But you can't be letting everyone get on the party. You can't be letting Blake Griffin, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet. You can't be letting guys like that have a strong impact. And that's where I think Milwaukee failed a little bit. And that's exactly why I'm going to go with Brooklyn, because I think Brooklyn, for as much as was made about them being an ISO 1v1, only one ball team, they have 3 ball hogs or whatever, 3 guys that need the ball. They have unbelievable offensive team chemistry. Their ball movement, their ability to create open shots. Now, a lot of that is because of the matchups they have. You have to double Kevin Durant. He's virtually unguardable one-on-one. If you ever help out on Kyrie Irving driving the lane or James Harden driving the lane, they're going to kick it out to Joe Harris, who's one of the best spot-up three-point shooters in the league. So they are a tough matchup on paper, but they play great as a team. They're very unselfish. Yeah. And they've just seemed to gel really well. Excuse me. Sorry about that. They've seemed to gel really well as a roster with so few games or so few game reps altogether. Yeah. So for me, that's why I think they're going to win this series. Obviously, people are saying a lot about their defense in the regular season. I'm not going to say that they didn't try on defense in the regular season, but it's fairly obvious when you watch playoff basketball, defensive intensity is turned up big time in the postseason. Kevin Durant is a very underrated defender. Obviously, Kyrie Irving's not a great defender, but their defense as a team isn't bad, and their offense is just such a beauty to watch. That's why they're going to beat Milwaukee. I do think Milwaukee's going to pick up the three-point shooting, though. It's hard to replicate a 6 for 30 game, especially when they were so hot against Miami. But the big thing for me is I need to see more from Drew Holiday, and I need to see more from Chris Middleton. They were both great in the Miami series. They were not good yesterday in game 1. They're going to need to step up if Milwaukee wants to stand a chance.
You're exactly right. I mean, when Chris Middleton goes 6 for 23 from the field, Trevor, I mean, you're not going to win that game. And this box score looks closer than it is, right? I mean, it was not that close. They lost by 8. It was a 15-point game with 2 minutes left. It wasn't close. It was a 20-point game with 4 minutes. Like, it wasn't close. Right. I liked what they did early. They were bullying Brooklyn in the paint on the offensive end. They were doing exactly what they needed to do, right? Brooklyn doesn't really have like a guy to defend in the paint against like a Brook Lopez even or a Giannis, right? I mean, they don't have a guy, who can really do that ever since they traded Jared Allen, and even he wouldn't really be able to stop them. But, I loved PJ Tucker early in this game. I think he's a great leader. I think he had great energy.
Can't guard Kevin Durant.
True. But he picked his pocket a few times, he had a couple nice steals. But the point is, I mean, Giannis went 16 for 24 from the field. He hit 40% of his threes. I mean, he played well, but the rest of his team was just abysmal. Brook Lopez played very well as well, but the rest of the team was just bad. They were just not good, and they need to be better. You're exactly right. And I don't think they're going to be able to slow down Brooklyn's offense. They have to pick up their offense. That's the only way you win this series. And I think they will pick up their offense. I think Middleton and Holiday will not have a game this bad the rest of the series. And I think they'll continue to attack the paint, right? And one of the broadcasters, Trevor, forgive me, I forget who the broadcasters were in this game, but they mentioned if you're not hitting your threes, you're missing, you end up going 6 for 30. if you're this cold with your jump shots as a team, like you have
Go to the
to,
rim.
you have to go to the rim. You have to stop shooting
Mhm.
and shooting, and when you just keep missing, like at some point you have to
Right.
be like, all right, going in the paint and getting to the basket is working. So we gotta switch it up and do that. So
Right.
if this
Right.
happens again, I really hope that they do that. They don't just keep jacking up threes the way they were. Unless they're
Mhm.
obviously shooting at a normal clip or they're hot. That's fine. But yeah, I don't think they can stop Brooklyn. This is in 5. I wouldn't be surprised if Harden misses this entire series, Trevor. I mean, they can afford
Wow.
to rest them. Look, hamstrings are a tough thing. They can nag you for
They are.
months. They can nag you for months if you come back too early. I mean, Harden missed 28 games with a hamstring injury early in the season, and now look at him. It's hurt again, right? So it's easy to re-injure, and I think it's important that they rest them for later in the playoffs. And if Blake Griffin keeps playing the way he did in that game, Trevor, I mean, they're not going to have any issues. I don't even want to look at his stats. I just want to say his effort in this game, diving for loose balls.
His stats were really good still, but I
True,
see your
but
point.
he had 18 points and I think 14 rebounds. But he's diving for loose balls. Milwaukee's passing it off of a defensive rebound, and he just dives for it. When it's like a bounce pass, he just dives for it and gets on the floor for it, gets a jump ball.
Mhm.
That's a great energy play. Got a standing ovation for one of his plays. That's how much hustle he was giving. I love that from a team, especially from a team like Brooklyn with all its talent. It shows that they're not taking anything for granted. They're getting grindy, they're getting physical. I'd love to see it. So, I really like this team. I mean, they're too good, even without Harden. I love this team, and that's why I have them in 5. Oh, and one last thing. Mike James, no one probably knows who he is. Mike James, a 6'1" point guard, off the bench for Brooklyn. This guy stepped up. He was 5 for 11 from the field. I mean, he's a puny guy. Had 7 rebounds and, had 12 points. He played really well. And when you have guys like Mike James stepping up and hitting big-time shots, you're not going to lose games. So I really like what Brooklyn's had. I really like how other guys are stepping up, and I think they'll win the series in 5.
5. Here's why Milwaukee can play a lot better, and that's why I still have hope for them. I do have a couple adjustments for Milwaukee. One, I think Giannis has to take KD. I think Giannis has to go in that locker room and be like, guys, I want him.
Yeah.
Number 2, Drew Holiday, and that's going to affect Giannis's offense, right? Having to guard a guy like Kevin Durant is going to affect his offense. But Giannis's size and his ability to move with Kevin Durant, he's the only guy maybe in the world that can move with Kevin Durant like that. Number 2, Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton are going to have to be great on the offensive end. And number 3, Milwaukee's three-point shooting will get better. They will not shoot 20% again in this series. They will only go up from here.
You're right.
And without James Harden, who is Brooklyn's floor general, I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee took game 2, right?
Yeah.
If they make the necessary adjustments and if they can shoot the ball better, they'll be fine in this series. Let's not overreact to one game. Brooklyn looked great. Right. But if I'm Milwaukee, I'm not banking on Blake Griffin having that effective of a game. Blake Griffin making 4 threes. Will he do that again? Mike James, yeah, he's a great story. Yeah. I don't think he'll be that effective going forward. So for me, I think Milwaukee, it was a case of rest versus rust. Milwaukee had a week off. You can't simulate a playoff game like field in practice. So it affected their shooting, right? They were cold. They got off to a bit of a slow start. And maybe they were a little bit rusty. I would expect them to play a lot better in game 2. And I hope Giannis decides to go one-on-one with Kevin Durant, because I think that's their best matchup for him defensively. Kevin Durant's gifted, but I think Giannis can slow him down. With all that being said, Ryan, unless you have any more final points, let's move on to the last. Oh, you have one more thing?
Well, I was just going to be super quick. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say one quick thing, which was that, look, if Milwaukee makes the adjustment of forcing the ball into the paint when they're not hitting their jump shots, I think this series goes to 6 easily. I just don't have faith that teams in modern NBA will shift away from the jump shot even when they're cold, right? I mean, most teams in the NBA, no matter how disciplined, if they're not in their threes, typically they'll just keep shooting them, right? Because that's what they're used to doing. I mean, typically, I don't see guys just totally shift away from the three-point line when they're missing a lot. So if I see that, then I'll be more confident and say that they can stretch us out to 6. But I don't really see that happening.
Okay.
But Trevor, with that being said, we can move on to the final series, right? And if you don't mind, I'm going to take this one first, if that's okay, which is the Sixers and the Hawks, Trevor. And game 1 was today. And the Hawks won in Philly, right? In front of a packed crowd. But Trevor, I do want to say Philly made this game super, super close at the end.
They did. They
Philly
really
was
did.
down, Trevor, I think by double digits with only a handful of minutes left, and they fought all the way back to bring it to a one possession game at the end. I mean, what fight this Philly team had, Trevor, I just want to say. And I think that's why Philly's going to win this series. I have Philly, I believe, Trevor, didn't I say in seven? Did I say in 7 games? I
I think
think
you
I
did say
did.
in
I
7.
did say in
I said in
seven.
6.
I would have said in 6 if I didn't see this game today. Because I would have expected Philly to come out and win game 1. I would have expected that. So I was surprised by this. That's why I'm saying Philly in 7. It's going to be a great series. But I think Philly played perhaps their worst half of basketball that they're going to play in the entire series. So I
Right.
think that Atlanta can't afford to, expect that type of bad play again in an entire half
Right.
from this team. And I think Philly is talented enough to not let that happen again. I do also want to say that Joel Embiid looks healthy to me, Trevor. And this is really important, right? Because he did have a knee injury. To
Mhm.
me, watching him 12 for 20 or 12 for 21 from the field, he was hitting mid-range shots off of one leg. He looked just fine to me. I mean, he looked near 100%, if not 100%. At least he didn't
Mhm.
show the effects of that injury. I mean,
Right.
dropping 39, I mean, that's just, it's disgusting. The one worry I have for Philly, Trevor, the only reason Atlanta could steal this series, I mean, not the only reason, but one of the reasons Atlanta could steal the series from Philly is Ben Simmons' inability to hit free throws. And
I'm glad you brought it up.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you were going to as well. I talked about this with you, I think, off the air about the last series, right? How Simmons, they were intentionally fouling him. The Washington Wizards were.
Right.
And they ended up winning that game because they intentionally fouled Ben Simmons and he missed so many free throws. I mean, today he was 3 for 10 from the line. Trevor, this isn't just bad. This is horrific. He's shooting like 30% from the line in the playoffs. I mean, that is horrible. That is really, really, that's worse than like Dwight Howard bad. Like, that's really, really bad.
That
So,
is really bad.
I mean, he's got to hit at least 50%. I mean, at least 50%, at least 1 out of 2 every trip if they want to, not be as on the ropes as they are in every single game. I mean, every game's going to be close, Trevor. If this guy is like not hitting free throws at all, teams are just going to intentionally foul and they start getting down. I mean, that's what they're going to do. So, he's got to step that up. And I want to see a little more out of their bench. I mean, I'm not seeing great things. I think Maxi's a great rookie. I think he has a lot of speed and energy, but I need to see him do better than 2 for 8 from the floor. But regardless, Trevor, I'm not too worried about Philly. It's going to be a really close series, but I think they have more talent, and I think that their defense was really good in this game. That's why they were able to come back so well. And I think that they will not play as bad as they did in this first half again in this entire series. But Atlanta's a talented team, and that's why they'll keep the series close. They're a great offensive team. The GM did a great job surrounding Trae Young with a bunch of shooters. I think it's been fantastic, and I think that this team's going to be a problem for Philly, but I think Philly prevails in the end because of their defense.
Philly is a good defensive team. They didn't show that today. Their defense was horrendous. Trae Young was getting anywhere he wanted. Trae Young dominated this game. And that was the story of the other series. Trae Young just dominating the New York Knicks. Trae Young dominated this game today. I wasn't able to watch a lot of it. I was in the car for a lot of the day today. But when a guy's able to go for 35 and 10 assists, that's a problem, especially when you know what he did against the Knicks in the previous series. The Philadelphia should have been ready for a Trae Young entourage. Obviously, he's very talented. You're not going to stop him. But
Sure.
there's no excuse to let a guy completely control a game like that. And especially in the first half, Philadelphia's defense was just
Yes.
Atlanta was hot, but
Yes.
Philadelphia's defense was it was puke worthy. It was horrible. Giving up 74 points in a playoff game, that's inexcusable. I still agree with you. I do think Philadelphia is going to win this series.
Yeah.
But Ben Simmons is becoming a real problem for this team. Ben Simmons, it's one thing if you don't want to shoot regular shots, if you don't want to shoot threes, if you don't want to shoot deep mid-range twos. But when teams are purposely fouling you because they see that as a better option, they see that as the best option to stop you from scoring, that is a serious thing. And for me, it's all mental with Ben Simmons. We've seen him in videos in practice in the gym just shooting shots. His release is not bad.
No, yeah.
He doesn't have an ugly shot like Shaquille O'Neal did, like other big men do who struggle from the free throw line. Dwight Howard doesn't have a very nice shot. Ben Simmons has a pretty smooth stroke. But for some reason in the games, and his free throws in the games just look so awkward. His shot doesn't look right in games. It's all mental for me.
Yes.
And he has no confidence. I really think the hack of Ben Simmons or hack a Shack, whatever you want to call it, really affected him.
Yeah.
But you can't go 3 for 10 from the free throw line. That is a huge letdown, especially in a game when you're trying to come back. You dig yourself a hole. You need to make all the free points you can get.
It's every
Philadelphia
game
missed,
too.
exactly. Philadelphia missed 11 free throws today. Philadelphia had 19 turnovers today. Philadelphia did not play very good basketball. I would expect them to come out a lot better Tuesday night. As I said, it's going to be Philly in 6. I think Embiid is going to dominate this series as he did today. Tobias Harris has been really good for them in these playoffs so far. Seth Curry has been streaky, but for the most part, he's been really good. I like this Philadelphia team, but I really think if they want to – I think they're going to be able to beat Atlanta regardless of Ben Simmons making free throws. But if they want to win the finals or get to the finals, they're going to need Ben Simmons to make his free throws. I think it's a serious issue.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing I see with this team that is consistent. I don't see them turning the ball over 19 times again.
Sure.
I don't see them, other than Ben Simmons, I don't see them missing. Well, I guess Simmons missed 7 of their 11 free throws. So I guess that's an issue. I don't see them giving up 74 points and a half again. I think this team's going to clean up a lot Tuesday night. But Ben Simmons, he's got to figure it out mentally because I don't think it's a physical thing with his shot. I think it's all in his head right now.
Yeah, and I feel bad for the guy. I mean, it's been the mental for years, and you said it exactly right. His shot doesn't look bad. I'm serious. You look at his shot, and I'm like, man, that's
not.
ugly. Like, it really doesn't look bad.
I wouldn't guess he's a 30% free throw shooter or whatever.
I wouldn't expect he's like a 0. He doesn't shoot threes at all. Like, his shot looks like a guy where, like, okay, this guy could probably hit a couple mid-range shots. He could probably hit a couple threes a game. I mean, it looks pretty decent. Especially for a 6'10" guy, it really looks decent, which is disappointing because he could take the step to a top 5 NBA player if he could.
He really could.
If he took jump shots and made them consistently, like he really could. But he can't. And his first step, Trevor, is to get in this offseason and shoot free throws until you're confident you can hit at least like 60, 70, 80%. Like just all offseason. That's all he needs to do, shoot free throws. Because Trevor, he's killing this team with his free throw problem. And I don't think it used to be this bad. I don't think it's ever been like 30% bad. Like this is all in his head. You're exactly right. It is all in his head 100%. And he's got to stop it because his team missed 11 free throws, as you said. The Hawks missed 1. A single free throw. They made their free throws. And they're a young team. And they just made every single free throw basically. So
they shot 14 less too.
Yeah. And I need him to make more because this is going to be – that might lose the series or it's going to be a lot closer than it needs to be if he keeps missing all these free throws. So we will see what happens with that. But that's definitely, in my opinion, their biggest problem, without a doubt. But we'll see what happens, Trevor. I think Atlanta's a dangerous team. I think that they're more dangerous than I thought they would be. I don't know about you.
Atlanta is exceeding my expectations. Yeah. I did predict them to beat the Knicks.
You did.
So I did think they were capable of winning a playoff series. But today showed me a lot. They're very well coached. They're very confident. They're young, but they have a superstar in Trae Young. And Trae Young just has an ability. He's like a Luka Doncic. He's like a Damian Lillard, Steph Curry. He just has an ability to just dominate a basketball game. And he can shoot the lights out. He can get anywhere he wants on the floor. If you put him in a screen and roll with Clint Capella, he's either going to get a 3, he's going to get his floater, or he's going to get a lob to Clint Capella or kick it out to a shooter like Bogdanovich or John Collins. And you're right, Ryan. It's a very well-constructed team around Trae Young. They have a lot of shooters. They have a good rim protector in Clint Capella. And they're a pretty deep team. I mean, they bring Danilo Gallinari off the bench. Yeah. They bring Kevin Huerter off the bench. Lou Williams can give them a boost off the bench. And then we even saw guys like more in the regular season, Okongwu and Tony Snell, who haven't done much in the playoffs. They can bring them off the bench as well. So this is a deep team. It's an athletic team. And they have a superstar in Trae Young who can just absolutely dominate a game.
Yeah, and before we wrap this up, Trevor, I do want to say 2 things. Their bench was fantastic today. Their starting lineup they were all negative in box plus minus.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Their bench was all positive, and
very interesting.
They stepped up big time. They played really, really well. I also want to know DeAndre Hunter missed today's game, and he's a really, really nice 2-way player. That is important because I really like him. I really like him a lot. And I also want to say, I want to shout out Bogdanovich because he stepped up big time today. hit a massive three when Philly was making that insane comeback, hit an insanely clutch three to seal the game. And then the game wasn't even sealed, actually. And then he turns around and hits 2 free throws to officially seal the game. So he stepped up big time with 5 points at the end of that game. I just wanted to shout him out because that's big time from a guy who hasn't been in the playoffs before, who was on the Sacramento Kings prior to this year. I just wanted to shout him out because that's respect for sealing that game for that team.
I'm really glad you did. Bogdanovich has been great. He was huge in the Knicks series as well, Ryan. But with all that being said, I believe that we'll almost conclude this podcast. I do want to throw in one more little anecdote that I wanted to mention.
Go ahead.
I wanted to call out ESPN, and they're probably never going to see this video, which is A-okay. But ESPN, they got some real knuckleheads predicting these NBA series. But I want to shout out one analyst in particular.
Oh, my gosh.
Bobby Marks. Thank you for being the one smart person that was hired by ESPN. 18 basketball analysts, Doris Burke, Tim Legler, Zach Lowe, all these guys, 18 analysts on ESPN's website predicted the Suns-Lakers series. 17 of them went for the Los Angeles Lakers. Bobby Marks was the lone soldier who not only predicted the Suns, like me, he said the Suns in 6. Bobby Marks, you are one of a kind, my friend. Tell those knucklehead bozos at ESPN to get their head out of you-know-where. Go Suns, and that's all I got to say.
Can I point out that none of these analysts thought that Anthony Davis would get injured
Did they know Chris Paul was going to be hurt and have to play through an injury the whole series? Look, we can play the injury.
Was Chris Paul so hurt that he couldn't run? Sorry,
Chris Paul was so hurt that he could barely dribble the ball and was afraid to shoot it for 4 games of the series. Yes.
He was so injured that he was hitting mid-range shots at an efficient clip pretty much all series, with the exception of game 2. But
I don't know what series you watched, my friend. I don't know what series. Did you see game 1? Did you see game 1? Did you see game 3?
Okay, fine. Game 1 and game 2. And he got hurt in game 1. Okay, fine. Game 2 and then game 3. Okay, game 3 he just didn't take that many shots. I'm telling you.
Right.
But what he did, he was making. It wasn't like he was going like 1 for 5 or like 1 for 6. He was hitting his shots at an efficient
So then
clip.
why stop shooting if you're making them?
It's called protecting your body. There's a difference between I won't be able to make it than like I want to heal my body and keep it like as protected as possible. There's a reason he's not taking threes in these games. He wants to make sure his shoulder's okay long term. Same way Floyd Mayweather tonight against Logan Paul didn't want to go for the knockout on Logan Paul because he didn't want to risk getting clocked because he doesn't have the range. Not that he couldn't do it. Chris Paul could shoot the 3. He just doesn't want to risk it. Point is, look,
risk it. You're in the damn playoffs. Now is the best time to risk it. I don't want to hear that.
Injuries are tough to predict. We'll leave it at that. But
injuries are tough to predict. And if I hear one more person tell me that LeBron James was not healthy, I'm going to laugh him out of the room.
He was not 100%. But
he was only healthy enough to do alley-oops and tomahawk dunks and warm-ups and other stuff. And when they're winning, he's doing all these cocky moves and these crazy finishes around the rim. But when he's losing, he's injured. Just want to get that straight. Anyways.
I also want to set the record straight and say that Trevor Kaufman here thinks LeBron James, who came back from a 3-1 deficit against the 73-9 Warriors, Golden State Warriors, thinks LeBron James is a front runner. So just remember that.
A little bit of a front runner.
The guy who had the greatest comeback in NBA history is apparently a front runner now. So
he can hey, drinks on me in Cancun, all right? Have a good summer.
You mean it's Space Jam 2 filming?
Oh, right. Whatever he's doing. He's not playing basketball, I know that.
True. But, Trevor, that wraps up this podcast. It's going to be fun watching these series this week. I'm, for one, am excited to see all of my predictions come to fruition in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully my Denver Nuggets step up. If not,
oh my God.
If not, more power to the Suns. But Trevor, with that, we will wrap this podcast up, and we will be back next week talking about more NBA playoffs, more NFL news if it comes up, and I swear we will bring up the MLB or the PGA once there is some time. But these podcasts are full of other content, and we just
didn't have time.
But with that, Trevor, we'll wrap this up, and we'll see everyone next week.